The flickering neon sign of Pete's General Store cast a lonely, blue-tinged glow onto the rain-slicked street, a stark contrast to the gleaming high-rises and meticulously manicured lawns of Silicon Valley, a world away. A sleek, obsidian-black sedan, almost invisible in the twilight, pulled quietly to the curb, its engine purring with suppressed power. From its plush, leather-lined interior emerged a figure cloaked in an unremarkable, well-worn denim jacket and a baseball cap pulled low, shadowing his face. He moved with a practiced anonymity, blending into the urban shadows as if he were just another face in the bustling cityscape, not the architect of digital empires, not the man whose name was synonymous with innovation and unimaginable wealth. This was Marcus Thorne, and he was about to step into a life far removed from his own, searching for something money couldn't buy. Marcus Thorne, a name whispered with reverence in tech circles and with gratitude in philanthropic ones, was a titan of industry at the relatively young age of 45. His journey from a humble, working-class background to the dizzying heights of a self-made billionaire was the stuff of legend. He'd built Thorne Technologies from a garage startup into a global powerhouse, pioneering advancements that had fundamentally reshaped the way the world communicated, worked, and played. Philanthropy had become his second nature, with billions channeled into education, environmental conservation, and social upliftment programs worldwide. Yet, despite his monumental success, the constant accolades, and the undeniable impact of his generosity, Marcus felt an unsettling void. A detachment had crept into his existence, a sense that the very walls of his success had insulated him from the raw, authentic pulse of human experience. He rarely encountered genuine emotion that wasn't filtered through layers of deference or professional courtesy. His life, while opulent, had begun to feel strangely hollow, like a beautiful, expertly crafted shell. Lately, his charitable endeavors had shifted focus closer to home, into what he termed community revitalization units, general stores designed not just as retail outlets, but as social hubs in underserved neighborhoods. These weren't just businesses. They were meant to be anchors, providing jobs, affordable goods, and a sense of belonging. The concept was noble, well-funded, and meticulously planned on paper. But Marcus, with his pragmatic, data-driven mind, found himself increasingly questioning the human element. Could algorithms and financial projections truly capture the essence of community? Could his wealth genuinely bridge the gap between his isolated world and the everyday struggles of the people he sought to help? He doubted it. He needed to see it, feel it, experience it firsthand. He needed to understand if his grand gestures were truly making a difference, or merely imposing another layer of his distant benevolence. This gnawing uncertainty had led him to this decision: to go undercover, to shed the gilded cage of his identity and step into the shoes of an ordinary person. He wanted to observe, to listen, to feel the authentic rhythm of life in one of the very communities his foundation was investing in. He had chosen this particular store, Pete's General Store, in a working-class district of a mid-sized American city, as his first target. It was one of the pilot locations for his new initiative, struggling but with undeniable potential. He wasn't looking for praise or recognition. He was looking for truth, for the unfiltered reality of human interaction, for the subtle cues that data couldn't provide. He wanted to see if the human spirit, resilient and often overlooked, could still shine brightest amidst the mundane, the challenging, and the often difficult circumstances of daily life. He was seeking a connection, an understanding that transcended balance sheets and philanthropic reports. His heart, despite its immense privilege, felt a deep yearning to reconnect with the very humanity he aimed to serve. He believed that somewhere within the humble aisles of Pete's General Store, he might just find the answer to the void that echoed in his opulent life, an answer hidden in plain sight, perhaps in the simple exchange between a cashier and a customer. He took a deep breath, the cold, damp air filling his lungs, and pushed open the slightly creaking door, the chime above announcing his anonymous arrival. He had no idea how profoundly this unassuming journey would change him, nor the unexpected impact it would have on the life of another, forging a connection that would ripple through their lives in ways neither could foresee. If you're intrigued by stories of unexpected connections and the power of genuine human empathy, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales like this one. The scent of stale coffee and industrial-strength cleaner hung heavy in the air as Marcus Thorne, now just Mark in his worn jeans and nondescript hoodie, pushed through the creaky glass doors of the neighborhood general store. The sign, faded by years of relentless sun and neglect, still proudly declared it Community Corner Market, a name that felt more like a hopeful whisper than a vibrant reality. This was one of the many struggling establishments in the working-class district he'd poured millions into, a district he now intended to observe firsthand, anonymously. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered uncertainly, casting a pallid glow on sparsely stocked shelves. Canned goods stood as lonely sentinels, dusty and uninviting. A small collection of wilted produce occupied a refrigerated unit that hummed with quiet desperation. Only a handful of customers ambled through the narrow aisles, their movements slow and deliberate, as if conserving energy or perhaps just overwhelmed by the store's palpable weariness. Marcus felt a familiar pang of disappointment, a stark contrast to the gleaming, well-appointed stores his foundation typically funded. This place felt like a shadow of its former self, a testament to overlooked communities and dwindling resources. He leaned against a rack of discounted paper towels, trying to blend in, to become just another face in the quiet crowd. His gaze soon settled on the cash register, the only point of real activity. There, a young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, stood with an air of quiet determination. Her name tag read, Maya. Even from a distance, her energy was unmistakable, a beacon in the otherwise dim environment. She was meticulously ringing up items for an elderly gentleman, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and though the store's uniform was simple, she wore it with an understated dignity. Maya listened intently as the customer recounted a minor grievance about a missing brand of tea, nodding sympathetically, her expression never wavering from patient attentiveness. She offered alternatives, patiently explaining the subtle differences, a small, reassuring smile playing on her lips. It was a genuine human connection, a small act of kindness Marcus rarely witnessed in the automated self-checkout world he usually inhabited. He saw her gently help the elderly man bag his groceries, even adding a friendly word about his day, something beyond the transactional requirement of her job. Later, a young mother, frazzled and trying to manage a squirming toddler, approached the counter. The child, just a few feet from Maya, knocked over a display of chewing gum, scattering colorful packets across the floor. Before the mother could apologize, a flush of embarrassment rising on her cheeks, Maya was already bending down, a soft chuckle escaping her, reassuring the woman with a warm, "No worries at all, happens all the time." Within seconds, she had the gum back in its place, the child distracted by a sticker Maya subtly offered, seemingly conjured from thin air. The mother's relieved smile spoke volumes, a silent thank you for the understanding and grace Maya extended. Marcus found himself observing Maya for a good 20 minutes, captivated by her quiet resilience. She moved through each interaction with a practiced ease, a calm professionalism that belied the store's general air of decline. She greeted regulars by name, remembered their preferred purchases, and offered genuine words of encouragement. He noticed the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled, a genuine warmth radiating from her that seemed to fill the sterile space with a faint glow. This was not the detached, perfunctory service he often encountered, even in high-end establishments. This was care. This was humanity. He watched as she efficiently handled a minor pricing discrepancy for another customer, resolving it quickly and without fuss. Her voice always level, always respectful, even when the customer's tone edged towards irritation. It was a stark contrast to his own world, where interactions were often transactional, fleeting, and devoid of true connection. He watched her for a prolonged period, feeling a growing curiosity about this young woman who seemed to embody everything his foundation aimed to support, yet did so with such quiet, unassuming grace amidst visible challenges. Her positive attitude, despite the obvious struggles of the store, ignited a spark of intrigue within him. He wondered what kept her going, what fueled that unwavering spirit in a place that clearly needed it most. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his chest, that he needed to understand more. Marcus, having spent several quiet minutes observing, finally decided it was time to make his move. He picked up a single, rather unremarkable energy bar and a small bottle of water, items so generic they screamed, "I'm just a casual shopper." He approached Maya's register, trying to project the air of someone completely unconcerned with anything beyond his immediate purchase. He watched her hands as she efficiently scanned the items for the customer ahead of him, her movements precise and practiced. There was an almost unconscious rhythm to her work, a quiet dedication that spoke volumes about her character. As the previous customer gathered their bags, Marcus stepped forward, placing his meager selections on the worn conveyor belt. Maya looked up, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting second before dropping back to the register. "Just these two today?" she asked, her voice even and professional, devoid of any discernible emotion, good or bad. It was exactly the kind of neutral interaction he expected, the standard retail exchange performed countless times a day. He nodded, offering a small, polite smile that she returned with equal measure, her practiced customer service smile. He noticed the faint lines around her eyes, subtle indications of long hours or perhaps a weariness she expertly concealed. The fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glow on the counter, highlighting the small imperfections on its surface and the slight sheen of perspiration on her forehead. As she scanned his items, the familiar beep, beep echoing through the relatively quiet store, Marcus subtly shifted his gaze, taking in the surroundings. He was acutely aware of his own disguise, the carefully chosen faded jeans and unassuming jacket that made him blend in, or so he hoped. He paid with cash, a deliberate choice to avoid any digital footprint that might betray his true identity. As she counted out his change, her fingers moved with a speed born of repetition, her focus unwavering. He imagined how many thousands of transactions she must have processed, each one a small, temporary interaction, yet for her, a piece of her day's work. Just as she handed him his change and the small bag, a woman from the back of the store, her voice laced with an irritable edge, called out, "Honestly, do you have anything in stock? This place is always so empty." Maya's expression, which had been perfectly neutral, faltered just for a split second. A brief, almost imperceptible flicker of sadness, a shadow of weariness, passed through her eyes before she quickly composed herself. She offered a strained, polite response to the complaining customer. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. We're expecting a delivery later this week. I can check if there's anything in the back for you." The woman scoffed, walked away without another word, and Maya turned back to Marcus, her smile now a little tighter, a little less authentic. The brief exchange, the way Maya's eyes had momentarily betrayed her inner feelings, resonated with Marcus. It wasn't just about a complaining customer. It was about the cumulative effect of such moments, the constant chipping away at one's spirit when facing daily struggles. He saw in that fleeting glance the weight of responsibility, the quiet burden of keeping a struggling store afloat in a community that clearly needed it. He had always approached his philanthropic ventures with a highly analytical, data-driven mindset, focusing on impact metrics and scalable solutions. But seeing that flicker in Maya's eyes, he felt a pang of something more visceral: empathy. It wasn't just a store to Maya. It was her livelihood, perhaps even a lifeline for others in the neighborhood. He understood, in that moment, that the success or failure of this small community general store wasn't just a line item on a spreadsheet for his foundation. It was deeply personal to the people who worked there, who relied on it. The cold, logical assessment he had planned was being subtly undermined by the simple, undeniable humanity radiating from this young woman. He took his small bag, offering Maya another small, genuine smile this time, an attempt to convey some unspoken recognition of her strength. She returned it, a hint of that earlier warmth returning to her eyes. He walked away from the counter, but the image of that brief, fleeting sadness remained etched in his mind, a silent testament to the challenges she faced, challenges he was only just beginning to comprehend on a deeper, more human level. His initial intention was to observe, to gather data. But now a different intention was beginning to form, one born of a growing understanding and a stirring sense of connection he hadn't anticipated. The brief encounter at the checkout had profound implications for Marcus. His initial plan of a quick, detached assessment had already begun to unravel, replaced by a growing, almost nagging curiosity about Maya. He felt an undeniable pull back to the store, not merely for strategic observation, but out of a genuine desire to understand the human element he'd glimpsed. Over the next few days, he became a regular fixture, albeit a discreet one, adopting the comfortable anonymity of an everyday customer. Each visit, he'd choose a different small item: a newspaper, a bottle of water, a specific brand of tea. Anything that necessitated a trip to the register, anything that afforded him another moment to observe Maya. He lingered in aisles, pretending to scrutinize labels, constantly aware of her movements. He saw her patiently guide an elderly woman to a harder-to-reach shelf, carefully explaining the benefits of one product over another, her voice soft and reassuring. He watched as she calmed a toddler whose balloon had burst, quickly finding another one from a hidden stash behind the counter, turning tears into giggles. These weren't just professional courtesies. They were quiet acts of genuine kindness, delivered without fanfare, often without any direct request. Maya possessed an innate ability to anticipate needs, to offer comfort, to navigate the small daily dramas of a community store with an almost maternal grace. She was the steady fulcrum around which the store, despite its visible struggles, continued to spin. Yet, beneath this unwavering composure, Marcus began to detect subtle signs of strain. He would intentionally position himself near the service desk, or while browsing the limited selection of produce, his ears attuned to the snatches of conversation Maya would have with colleagues, or more tellingly, with herself during quieter moments. Once, he heard her sigh, a deep, weary sound as she muttered something about another bill while tidying a display. Another time, he overheard her gently declining a colleague's invitation to an evening outing, explaining with a hint of regret, "Can't tonight. Gotta pick up an extra shift elsewhere." These fragmented phrases painted a picture of a young woman juggling responsibilities, stretching herself thin, perhaps burdened by financial pressures he could only guess at. The vibrant energy she projected to customers seemed to cost her, demanding a personal toll he was only now beginning to perceive. The resilience he admired was clearly born of necessity, not simply a cheerful disposition. This unfolding reality stirred Marcus's internal conflict. He was a man accustomed to solving problems with resources, to sweeping in with impactful solutions. His foundation existed precisely for this purpose. Yet here he was, observing a situation that cried out for intervention, while bound by his self-imposed disguise. The objective assessment he sought was increasingly tainted by a growing, almost paternal desire to alleviate Maya's evident struggles. He grappled with the ethical implications of maintaining his anonymity. How long could he stand by and watch when he possessed the means to make a tangible difference? His research into the store's financials, conducted remotely through his team, had confirmed his suspicions. It was barely breaking even, a testament largely to Maya's diligent efforts and community goodwill. It was a place teetering on the brink, and its most valuable asset, Maya herself, seemed perilously close to breaking under the strain. Then came the turning point that solidified his resolve. It was late afternoon, the store relatively quiet. Marcus was near the back, pretending to compare cleaning products, when a loud, aggressive voice shattered the calm. A man, red-faced and clearly agitated, was yelling at Maya at the register. "This is ridiculous. No organic milk. Again. What kind of store is this? You people never have anything I need. Are you even trying?" His words were laced with venom, his tone patronizing and cruel. Marcus watched, his fists clenching instinctively. Maya, despite the man's escalating verbal assault, remained utterly professional. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, a defensive posture, but her voice never wavered. "Sir, I sincerely apologize. We've had supply chain issues for organic dairy, but I can offer you a discount on the regular milk, or I can call our other branch to see if they have it in stock for you to pick up." She offered solutions, maintained eye contact, and bore the brunt of his irrational anger with an almost superhuman patience. The man continued to berate her for another minute, oblivious to her efforts before storming out, leaving a ringing silence in his wake. As he passed Marcus, his face still contorted in a sneer, Marcus felt a surge of protectiveness and profound respect for Maya. She simply took a deep, almost invisible breath, straightened her uniform, and then, completely alone for a moment, closed her eyes for the briefest fraction of a second before opening them again, ready for the next customer. Marcus knew then that his passive observation had to end. He could no longer afford to distance himself. The time for objective assessment was over. The time for human connection and perhaps intervention had arrived. The shadow of weariness Marcus observed in Maya's eyes lingered in his thoughts long after he'd left the store. He found himself returning over the next few days, not just for observation, but drawn by an almost magnetic curiosity. Each visit solidified his growing conviction. This woman, this cashier, was far more than a statistic in a community uplift project. Her resilience, her quiet acts of kindness, and that fleeting glimpse of her burden had chipped away at his carefully constructed wall of professional detachment. The analytical framework he usually applied to his investments and philanthropies felt inadequate here. He realized that to truly understand the impact of his initiatives, to genuinely assess the human element he sought, he needed to move beyond mere observation. He needed to engage. So, one quiet afternoon, when the store was sparsely populated, Marcus approached Maya's register with a basket holding just a few necessities. He had chosen items that would require a little more time to scan, a strategic maneuver for a longer interaction. As she scanned his purchases, her usual practiced efficiency was on display. He cleared his throat lightly, a small gesture to command her attention beyond the transaction. "It seems like you have quite a knack for handling everything here, Maya," he began, his voice calm and friendly, still maintaining the persona of a regular, appreciative customer. "It can't be easy running a place like this." Maya paused, her fingers momentarily stilling on the register keys before she looked up at him, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Few customers bothered with more than a perfunctory greeting or complaint. "Oh, thank you," she replied, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. It's certainly a lot, especially with everything going on." She offered a small, knowing smile that suggested unspoken challenges. Marcus pressed gently. "Everything going on? The neighborhood, the store itself?" He tried to keep his tone casual, inquisitive, avoiding any hint of probing. She sighed softly, her gaze drifting around the somewhat depleted shelves. "Both, I suppose. This store, it means so much to the people here. It's not just about groceries. It's a place where people connect, especially the older folks. But it's tough. The inventory, the repairs needed. It feels like we're always just barely keeping our heads above water." Her voice was soft, tinged with an underlying strain that Marcus immediately recognized as genuine concern, not just for her job, but for the community that depended on this place. He nodded, feigning understanding. "I can imagine. It must be frustrating, working so hard and feeling like you're always fighting an uphill battle." He watched her carefully, noting how she wrung her hands slightly before returning her attention to his items. She was opening up, if only incrementally, and he felt a surge of responsibility, a desire to hear more, to truly comprehend the depth of her experience. "It is," she admitted, her voice dropping a little as if sharing a secret. "But I love this work, honestly. I love the people. You see so much, hear so much. There's so much good here despite everything. I wish we had more resources, more support to make it what it could be, what it should be for this community." Her eyes, usually so guarded, held a raw vulnerability now, a desperate hope mixed with a weary resignation. Marcus felt a profound shift within him. He wasn't just observing a problem anymore. He was witnessing a direct plea, a genuine desire for positive change from someone on the front lines. He saw not just the financial struggles, but the emotional investment, the deep-seated care Maya poured into her work. This wasn't just a job for her, it was a mission. He realized his initial assessment of the community store, based solely on numbers and market analysis, had been deeply flawed. The true value lay in people like Maya. He reached for his wallet, pulling out his credit card, a deliberate departure from his previous cash payments, a subtle signal that he might not be just any customer. He handed it to her, his gaze unwavering, trying to convey a silent message of support. "It's admirable, that dedication," he said, keeping his voice low. "Not many people care that deeply these days." Maya took his card, her fingers brushing slightly against his. She processed the payment, the familiar sounds of the card reader filling the brief silence. Then she looked back at him, her eyes still holding that mixture of hope and exhaustion. In that pregnant moment, a moment heavy with unspoken aspirations and the weight of daily struggle, she uttered 3 words that cut through Marcus's carefully constructed disguise, freezing him mid-thought, stopping his world entirely. Her voice was barely above a whisper, a stark, profound expression of her deepest longing, an intimate revelation spoken not to the billionaire philanthropist, but to the kind stranger who had genuinely listened. The words hung in the air, a fragile whisper that seemed to absorb all the ambient sounds of the bustling store. Maya exhaled slowly, her shoulders slumping almost imperceptibly, and then, her gaze meeting Marcus's, she uttered, not a full sentence but an abbreviated sentiment laden with unspoken desires. "I just wish for a chance." The phrase wasn't directed at him specifically, but rather seemed to escape her lips as a weary confession to the universe, a raw, unvarnished plea. It was a stark departure from her usual composed professionalism, a crack in the carefully constructed facade she maintained day in and day out. Marcus froze, his hand still poised over the payment terminal, a single $10 bill clutched between his fingers. The simple honesty, the raw, aching emotion packed into those 3 short words, "for a chance," hit him with an unexpected force, sending a jolt through his entire being. He had anticipated many things during his undercover observation: complaints about management, frustrations about low wages, even cynical remarks about the company's future. But this was different. It wasn't a demand or a lament rooted in bitterness. It was a profound expression of hope against daunting odds, a quiet yearning for opportunity. In that instant, the bustling sounds of the store faded into a distant hum. The fluorescent lights seemed to dim, and the weight of his disguise, the carefully crafted anonymity he had maintained, suddenly felt heavy, almost suffocating. He stared at Maya, truly seeing her for the first time beyond the role of a diligent cashier. Her eyes, usually so focused and guarded, now held a vulnerability that was both unsettling and deeply moving. He saw not just the fatigue of long hours, but the flicker of untapped potential, the quiet resilience of someone who had faced countless closed doors but refused to abandon the belief that one might eventually open. His mind raced, a whirlwind of thoughts and memories. For a chance. How many times had he, a young man from humble beginnings himself, silently uttered those very words? How many relentless hours had he poured into coding, into building his first company, driven by the desperate need for a chance to prove himself, to escape the gravitational pull of poverty? His own journey, now a distant, shiny success story, had begun with that same fierce, unyielding desire. He had been lucky. He had seized his chances, often creating them where none existed. But for so many, especially those like Maya, the opportunities simply didn't materialize, no matter how hard they worked or how brightly their ambition burned. The words resonated deeply, striking a chord within his own past struggles, a past he frequently buried under layers of philanthropic endeavors and strategic business decisions. He realized, with a startling clarity, that Maya's quiet plea wasn't just about a job or even about the struggling store. It was about dignity, about the fundamental human desire for self-determination, for the opportunity to build a better life, not through charity, but through merit and hard work. It was about being seen, being valued, and being given the tools to thrive. He looked at the weary lines around her eyes, the subtle tension in her jaw. He imagined her going home after a long shift, perhaps to a second job, or to a demanding family responsibility. Each day, a relentless cycle of effort with few visible rewards. The disguise he wore, the anonymity he cherished, suddenly felt like a barrier, separating him from a reality he had once known, but had since insulated himself from. He saw not just a cashier, but a person with dreams and burdens, a microcosm of the very community he claimed to want to help. The objective, data-driven assessment he had planned for his foundation's investment dissolved, replaced by a profound wave of empathy. This wasn't about spreadsheets now. It was about human lives, about the quiet desperation of those who simply wanted a chance. The millionaire in him, the shrewd businessman, temporarily receded, replaced by the ghost of the determined young man who had once stood at a similar crossroads, yearning for an opportunity, for someone to believe in him. He knew, with an absolute certainty that transcended logic, that he could no longer stand by as a mere observer. Her words had irrevocably shifted something deep within him, cracking open a compartment of his heart he thought he had long sealed away. The game was over. The mission had changed. He had to help. He just needed to figure out how, without revealing the full extent of his true identity just yet. The path forward, however, was now undeniably clear. The game was over. The mission had changed. He had to help. He just needed to figure out how, without revealing the full extent of his true identity just yet. The path forward, however, was now undeniably clear. He took a slow, deep breath, the metallic tang of the store's air filling his lungs. The weight of his disguise, once a comfortable cloak of anonymity, now felt like a suffocating shroud. He couldn't discard it entirely, not yet, but he could certainly loosen its grip. The impulse to simply write her a check, to solve her problems with the effortless sweep of his financial power, was strong. But he knew that wasn't the kind of chance Maya needed or deserved. That would be charity, not empowerment. He looked at Maya again, her eyes still holding that quiet pleading, though she was now focused on bagging his meager groceries. He cleared his throat, a subtle sound that nevertheless drew her attention. "You know," he began, his voice a little softer than before, "I've been coming into this store for a few weeks now, and I've noticed a lot." Maya paused, her hands still. She looked up, a flicker of confusion crossing her features. It wasn't a complaint, nor was it the usual superficial pleasantry. There was a new gravitas in his tone, a depth she hadn't detected before. "Oh?" she managed, her brow furrowing slightly. "Is there a problem with your purchase, sir?" She immediately shifted into her professional customer service mode, ready to troubleshoot. Marcus offered a small, reassuring smile. No problem at all with the purchase. Quite the opposite, actually." He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice just a fraction, making it feel more confidential, more personal. "I've noticed your dedication, the way you handle every customer, even the difficult ones, with such patience. The genuine care you show for this place." He gestured vaguely around the small, somewhat dilapidated store. "It's rare in any business, let alone a community store like this." Maya blinked, genuinely surprised. Compliments weren't an everyday occurrence, especially not such heartfelt ones from a seemingly ordinary customer. A faint blush rose to her cheeks. "Thank you, sir," she said softly, her eyes dropping almost shyly. I try my best. This store means a lot to the neighborhood, you know, and to me." Her voice held a note of quiet pride, mixed with a hint of underlying vulnerability. "I understand that completely," Marcus replied, his gaze unwavering. "And that's precisely my point. What you do here, what this store represents, it's vital. More vital than many realize." He paused, calculating his next words carefully. He needed to plant a seed, offer a lifeline, without raising immediate suspicions or making her feel like an object of pity. "I happen to know a few people," he continued, carefully choosing his words, "who are deeply invested in community revitalization projects, particularly in supporting local businesses that truly serve their neighborhoods." Maya's confusion deepened. "Community revitalization projects?" she repeated, the words sounding foreign and slightly out of place in their current setting. She was trying to connect the dots, but his shift in topic felt abrupt. She sensed a change, a subtle ripple in the usual customer-cashier dynamic, but she couldn't quite pinpoint it. The easygoing, slightly detached customer had suddenly become intensely focused, almost earnest. "Yes," Marcus affirmed, a knowing glint in his eye. "People who believe that places like this store, with dedicated individuals like yourself at the helm, are the backbone of a strong community. They look for opportunities to provide resources, guidance, even partnership, to help these places not just survive, but truly thrive." He watched her closely, searching for any sign of understanding, any spark of recognition in her tired eyes. A flicker of something, was it hope, or perhaps just bewildered curiosity, crossed Maya's face. "Resources? Partnership?" she mumbled, almost to herself. The concepts felt distant, abstract, like something she'd read about in a newspaper article, not something that would ever touch her reality. Her own resources were stretched thin. Partnership usually meant trying to convince her manager to stock a particular type of bread. Marcus pressed on, sensing her skepticism, but also a nascent interest. "Exactly. Think of it as a way to unlock that chance you mentioned. A chance for this store to truly flourish, to better serve the people who depend on it, and a chance for someone with your dedication and insight to have a bigger impact." He emphasized the word impact, trying to convey the potential scope of what he was hinting at. He knew he was speaking in generalities, but he couldn't drop the full truth bomb just yet. He wanted her to begin to imagine the possibilities, to feel the pull of a future that seemed impossible just moments ago. He continued, painting a slightly more vivid picture. "These aren't just faceless organizations, Maya. These are individuals who genuinely believe in the power of local enterprise, people who have seen firsthand how a little strategic support can transform struggling ventures into vital community assets. They look for passion, for dedication, for people who understand the heart of a neighborhood. All things you clearly possess in abundance." He saw it then, a subtle shift in her posture, a slight lifting of her chin. The confusion hadn't entirely vanished, but it was now overlaid with something new, something tentative and fragile. A glimmer of hope, like a shy dawn breaking through a long night. Her eyes, which moments ago had held the weight of untold responsibilities, now seemed to hold a nascent, almost imperceptible spark. She wasn't smiling, not yet, but the lines of worry around her mouth had softened ever so slightly. I don't understand," she began, but her voice was different now. There was less resignation, more inquiry. "Who are these people? And how would they even know about this store?" She gestured around the small space, a silent question hanging in the air. The idea, outlandish as it seemed, was beginning to take root, a tiny, fragile sprout in the barren landscape of her daily struggles. She was starting to believe, just a little, that perhaps, just perhaps, this might not be just another customer passing through, but something more. something profoundly different. The following morning, Marcus, now shedding the last vestiges of his regular customer persona, returned to the store, but this time with a clear, decisive purpose. He wasn't there to observe, he was there to act. He bypassed the cashier lane, heading directly for the small, perpetually cluttered office he'd noticed tucked away in the back. His call to his executive assistant the previous night had set wheels in motion, and a meeting had already been arranged with the store manager, ostensibly to discuss a community partnership initiative. The manager, a man named Mr. Henderson, whom Marcus had seen tirelessly attempting to keep the failing store afloat, was visibly surprised by the unexpected visit from a representative of the Thorn Foundation, a name he recognized instantly from news articles about its significant philanthropic endeavors. Marcus, introducing himself as a community engagement liaison for the foundation, laid out a comprehensive plan. He spoke of revitalizing the store, not as a charity case, but as a strategic investment in urban renewal. He detailed modern inventory systems, a fresh marketing strategy, and a complete renovation of the dilapidated interior. But the core of his proposal, the part that truly lit up Mr. Henderson's face, was the commitment to the staff. Marcus stipulated that every current employee would be retained, retrained, and offered opportunities for advancement. He emphasized the importance of local talent and deeply understood the value of the human capital already invested in the community. Within days, the transformation began. Marcus, now operating openly, though still maintaining a low profile regarding his personal wealth, oversaw a team of consultants from the Thorn Foundation. Maya, initially bewildered by the sudden flurry of activity and the presence of these new professional faces, found herself attending workshops on customer service excellence and inventory management. She absorbed every piece of information like a sponge, her inherent intelligence and dedication shining through. One afternoon, Marcus, catching Maya during a quiet moment, approached her at the now gleaming counter. The shelves were slowly filling with fresh produce and a wider variety of goods. The lighting was brighter, and a palpable sense of renewed energy permeated the space. He told her how impressed he was with her work ethic, her natural leadership, and her unwavering positive attitude. Then, he delivered the news that would change her life. "Maya," he began, "the foundation is looking for someone to step into the role of store manager. Someone who understands this community, who has a passion for service, and who can lead this store into its new chapter. We believe that person is you." Maya froze, a familiar sensation, but this time it was from sheer, overwhelming disbelief and joy. The words echoed in her mind, "For a chance." And now, here it was, not just a chance, but the chance. The promotion came with a significant salary increase, comprehensive benefits, and the promise of further training and development. She wouldn't just be managing a store, she would be helming a flagship community hub, a testament to what thoughtful investment and genuine care could achieve. Under Maya's vibrant leadership, the store rapidly transformed. It became more than just a place to buy groceries. It evolved into a true community center. A small cafe section was added, offering healthy, affordable meals. Local artisans were given space to sell their crafts. Workshops on financial literacy and small business development were hosted in the newly renovated backroom. Maya, always with a welcoming smile, knew every regular by name, remembered their preferences, and fostered an atmosphere of belonging. The store, once a symbol of neglect, was now a beacon of hope and resilience, a place where people felt seen and valued. For Marcus, the transformation of the store, and more importantly, of Maya's life, filled the void he had felt within himself for so long. He continued his visits, no longer disguised, but as a silent benefactor, an interested observer of the thriving ecosystem he had helped create. He saw Maya, radiating confidence and purpose, guiding her team, engaging with customers, and making decisions that directly impacted the well-being of the neighborhood. The detached philanthropy that had once defined his giving had been replaced by a deeply personal connection, a profound understanding of the ripple effect of genuine empathy. He learned that true wealth wasn't just in the billions he accumulated, but in the authentic human connection, in the empowered smiles of those he had helped lift up towards their own potential. His journey, which began with a quiet curiosity and a desire to assess an investment, had evolved into something far more profound. It wasn't just about revitalizing a store. It was about rediscovering his own humanity, about proving that even the simplest words, uttered by the most unexpected person, could ignite a spark that reshapes destinies. As he walked away from the bustling, vibrant store, a sense of deep contentment settled over him. He had found the connection he sought, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet strength of a cashier who simply wished for a chance. And in giving that chance, he had received something far more valuable than anything money could buy. This story serves as a powerful reminder that empathy and unexpected kindness can create profound change, igniting hope in the most unassuming places. If you were touched by Marcus's journey and Maya's resilience, remember to like this video, share it with someone who needs a dose of inspiration, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales of human connection and surprising transformations. Stay tuned for our next video, where we explore another incredible story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things.